Welcome to the special meeting of the Oroville City Council, June 14th, 2022. I'm calling this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll?
Councilmember Hatley. Here. Councilmember Riggs.
Here.
Councilmember Goodson. Yes. Sorry. Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Pittman. Here. Vice Mayor Thompson. Mayor Reynolds.
Here. Okay. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Salute. Pledge. And to the republic for which it stands, nation under God.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Huber is at a Paradise City Council meeting this afternoon. If we need somebody by phone, we can get a hold of him or one of his colleagues very quickly.
Okay. Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I do have 1 speaker for item 1. Kay Castro.
Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar, pulling item number 1.
So moved.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, I do not have any speakers on the consent calendar.
Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, oh. Sorry.
I'm sorry, did you ask?
Adopt the consent calendar.
Motion carries with 6 yeses and 1 absent.
Moving on to regular business. We have one item, 2022-23 budget workshop. Do we have any speakers on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have 1 speaker, Kay Castro.
Good afternoon. I apologize. I thought I'd get a copy of the budget here, so I did not go through the packet and print it out. I always appreciate speaking after I hear the presentation, but I will say generically that I would like you to put into the budget as much money as you possibly can for public safety. I was disappointed that the last Measure U meeting, we were unable to hold it because of a lack of a quorum. I would like to also reinstate my plea that we're volunteers and we're appointed, yes, but we're not elected. And if there is any way at all possible, we could figure out how to zoom in so that we can get a quorum. We may not have a quorum for the Park Commission meeting today either. And it's very disappointing to me. I know we've made a commitment and we should be there, but people are really doing businesses and working at 4:30, even 5 o'clock can't get here. So anything we can do to increase public participation, I would really appreciate. And again, I'd like to have more money put at the grassroots level of public safety. I want to say how thrilled I am to see all those white stripes painted down there on Huntoon and Lincoln. I've been almost killed many times not looking the right direction for cars coming. And it looks really beautiful, and I'm grateful for the streets and the potholes and the trees and everything that we're doing. But I do believe we need some more grassroots efforts, not permanent security, not permanent hiring, permanent public security. Businesses all over town are resorting to private security. I don't recommend that for us. Our Oroville Police Department is awesome, but possibly if we make it so uncomfortable, possibly we might be able to come up with some solutions. I don't believe it's a crime to be homeless. I believe it's a crime to defecate in public. I believe it's a crime to jump out at me when I'm walking from the Veterans Hall under the bridge and scare me. I do not want to walk over any more passed out people in my building foyer. It takes a lot to scare me. I've traveled alone all over the world, and I'm starting to get a little afraid here. And I want to say, with as much kindness as I can, I believe you're protecting not the homeless, but the criminals, the ones doing the vandals, the ones doing the trash, the ones that are illegally in our parks.
Excuse me, are you still talking about the budget?
I am talking about budget because I want you to put more money in the budget to help make me feel safe, help make me feel a part of this community and not extra because I'm not homeless. It's budget.
Time. Mr. Mayor, that is the only speaker card that I have.
Okay. Mr. Legrand?
Mr. Mayor, we have presented a budget, a proposed budget for the 22-23 fiscal year. It is a balanced budget. The details of the budget will be provided by Ms. Wright. The budget was provided at the last council meeting for the council to have an opportunity to review and to prepare for this meeting. The purpose of this meeting today is to provide your insight, your thoughts, and to make adjustments where you would see that that would be necessary within your budget. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Wright, and she will give you an overview of that, and then we can have a discussion regarding the budget if you so choose.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. So we're here today to talk about the budget. When preparing the budget, I always start with the revenues so that I get a good idea of how much money we can spend. So when you think of the budget, there is a budget here for all of our funds. I think there's almost 60 funds in here. But the one we normally talk about is the general fund. And then we have the district tax fund that at the end of the year gets rolled up with the general fund because it's actually considered general fund money, but we are accounting for them separately so that we could be able to easily report to the oversight board on our revenues and expenditures. But for financial statement purposes, if you're looking at our financial statements, they're combined, but in our budget, they're separate. So we'll start with the revenues so we have a good idea of what we can spend. And when you're thinking of, also when you're thinking of the general fund, you're only thinking of operational costs for the year. And you don't want one-time one-time money matching up with one-time ongoing expenditures. So it's really important that we identify those kind of things. And so if I could get my tablet displayed. I apologize. I thought that the budget was included on the agenda, but it's not. So if you look at the last agenda for last Tuesday, there is the budget is attached to that, but it's not on this agenda, unfortunately. So starting with the revenues, we always have our revenues matched up here by resource. So starting with I kind of put them in order of our biggest revenue, and that is the sales and use tax. So as you can see, we're expecting a little over $6 million. We're expecting a little over $6 million for this year too. So I didn't put much change there. We always talk about the possibility of an economic downturn, and it just has never happened. So we're just kind of going to go with the flow, and until we get information that there is going to be a recession, then we would have to adjust this number. But we have just a slight increase projected for this next year. Our property taxes, again, a slight increase, and you pretty much see that down the row. So for all of our taxes, we have a little over $13 million projected for the coming year. Our license, permit, and franchise fees, we have about almost $700,000 projected. And other revenues, we have $7.5 million, and that does include next year of getting that $2.4 million from the local recovery funds. That's one-time money. So it's money that is from COVID that has been allocated to the cities. So it's a total of 4.9. We have already received 2.4. So we're expecting the other half to come in July. So that is also in the budget. And so if you look at the grand total, we're expecting $21 million in our operating budget for fiscal year 22-23. So moving on to expenses, we have to allocate that to all the departments. Sorry, I'm having troubles with my monitor. We have all the expenses categorized by department. This is a summary of expenditures. So if you go down into page 13, it starts going by department, and then you'll have a little bit more detail on there, but this is just a summary by department, the total expenditures. And obviously, the major change for this year is going to be our fire department. It is getting contracted out to Cal Fire, and so we have put in those expenses, and it's a little bit high. We have transitional costs included in there and the unfunded liability. So we'll be paying on the unfunded liability 2 more years, and then we can start reducing that out because we're not accruing more service years on the fire department. So I tried to break that out on the detail page between operating costs and transitional costs. So if you look at page 16, that has the little more detail. Try to make this bigger. So our contract is going to be $4.9 million with CAL FIRE and transitional costs of about $1 million. And then we have to maintain the vehicles, and we have to pay for fuel and take care of it. So we have a total fire budget of $6.1 million. That, I would say, is the biggest change. And then if you go. Oh, sure.
I have a question.
Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you. The unfunded liabilities for fire is not included in that 6.1?
It is.
Yeah, it's right here.
Is it?
So let me go
Right.
to this sheet.
Thank you.
Here's our fire costs. Our unfunded liability this year is $876,000, and we are going to pay that for 2 more years before we can start reducing it down, because we're paying for 2 years prior. So there are 3 different PERS costs included in this budget. And then we have $20,000 in fuel, $14,000 in maintenance of equipment, maintenance vehicles, and then our contract of $4.9, telecommunications $8,500, and utilities $4,000. That brings us to $6.1 million. The other major change would be in our district tax fund. Let me go there. So we are projecting revenue of $7.7 million in our district tax fund next year, all things being this equal, and if we don't have an economic downturn. So out of that budget, we are paying.
Councilmember Pittman has a
sure.
question.
In the back in the fire budget, do you have listed the transitional costs that moves the city employees to the state? There's cost that'll be going to different employees. Was that included in this number
Yes,
somewhere?
yes, it is.
Which number is that included in?
So if you look at page 16.
Third item?
The transitional cost, and if you look under the fire category, the salaries and benefits, services and supplies, and then transitional cost is separated out right there.
Got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, I see it.
So without having any fire expenses in our district tax fund, we did add 5 police positions and 2 streets positions to the district tax fund this year to make it, to balance it back out because of the, taking the fire expenses out.
We added those?
What's that?
Did you say we added those?
We added those because last year we had some fire allocated to the district tax fund, and this year we're paying nothing out of the district tax fund for the fire personnel. So we added 5 police positions and 2 streets.
And council, if I could just jump in for a moment, on the revenues, Ruth kind of pushed over that kind of quickly. The revenues are not just based upon we sit and, decide that, hey, it's going to be the same next year, or it's going to be how we feel about the economy. We have a consultant that actually monitors that for us and provides us 3 different levels in which we can do our budget and do our projections. It's likely to happen, unlikely to happen, and most likely to happen. We always go with the middle of the road, not the most conservative, but a very conservative approach to this. So these numbers that we're putting in here for the district tax and for also the sales tax are based upon those professional recommendations from a professional consultant that monitors the trends and the patterns of our sales tax from those that do pay the sales tax. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware, hey, we're not just sitting in the back thinking, well, hey, things are great. I mean, we do, and we monitor that every 3 months. If something were to be a downturn and they alerted us to that, we would be immediately back to this council saying we have to adjust.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would have to say that all of the expenses that we have estimated are estimated very conservative, very high. We don't want to ever come in over and have to come back and ask the council for more appropriations. So they're very conservative numbers, and hopefully everything will come in a lot less than what we've estimated. But I know we've had problems filling positions, so that's always created a savings in the budget. So hopefully that turns around this year. But I don't know, do you have any questions for me?
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, your last statement that said that the movement of the district's Measure U tax to 5 more police positions indicated that there's no more of the Measure U tax going to fire services.
Absolutely none. This was budgeted for Measure U to
Very
fire.
interested me. I appreciate that comment because that's not what the voters voted for. And I appreciate your candid and forthrightness, but that's just not what the voters voted for. Thank you.
Councilmember Goodson.
So just for clarity purposes, and Bill, you can help me with this. It's my recollection that when the original cost of CAL FIRE came in was 4 million, and now we're looking at 6.1?
Yes, the contract is for $4.9 million all in. The 6.1 is including your transitional cost over the next 2 years.
All right, thank you.
Or I'm sorry, part of this fiscal year and into next fiscal year.
And the other fees associated with the fire department, like fuel and.
Yeah, all your operational costs are included in that. And the one thing I would add on to that is that your $4.9 million contract is at your top step for CAL FIRE. I don't want to sit here and tell you that there's going to be savings, but there is the potential of some savings by not having people at all the top steps within that contract. So it is just it's a considering factor is all.
Councilmember Riggs.
For the additional police personnel, what are we budgeting those positions into? Are they regular patrol? Are they MLEs? Are they sergeants?
Police
Just all over the
officers.
place? Okay.
Yeah, at about 125,000 each
Thank
with
you.
benefits.
And what about for streets? What are those positions?
We did 175,000 for 2 positions.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, just so we're comparing apples and apples, on the other department budgets that we have, are we considering all those budget personnel costs at top step?
No, actually, we do an analysis of the current step and then the step increase, and it's actually prorated, and so it's kind of a lot more.
Current cost?
Yeah.
So we're not even, we don't have the fire department current cost as a comparison to see what the lower amount would be.
We would have the prior year
The
as
prior
what it
year.
was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want that because when we compare this thing, this is the biggest, hugest waste of city taxpayer dollars I've ever seen in the history of the city of Oroville. So I appreciate the answer to that question. Thank you.
That's it for questions for now?
Okay.
All right, Mr. Mayor, if anybody would like to make any comments or any suggested changes to the budget, we'll accept those. If there is none other, then I believe we're done with our business.
Councilmember Riggs?
Sorry, I thought that she was going to keep going and talk about all the other areas. I was so looking forward to it.
I'll talk all day if you want me to.
So I saved this question thinking we would get there.
Okay.
I know that we have a number of positions within code enforcement that are currently funded underneath a grant. So are we currently preparing for that trend? I know that it's a few years out, but are we preparing for absorbing those positions into our general budget now, or is that something we'd start planning for in the coming years?
Yeah, I could ask Dawn to help with this question too, but we did budget all the code enforcement that we had projected.
Yes, we have budgeted for those code enforcement positions, and that grant does end in 2024, so we would be prepared to absorb those positions in 2024.
So my understanding of that answer is that we have budgeted them out of the general fund already, and then we are just going to be reimbursing our general fund with the grant dollars, so that after we extend past the granting period, we will just continue on paying out of the general fund with no reimbursement of grant dollars.
That's correct.
Great. I'm encouraged to hear that. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Thompson?
Thank you. And could you clarify the funds that are coming from the one-time monies, the 2.4?
The 2.4 million that's coming in July has not been allocated by council, so
That was my question.
we had thought that we needed to allocate projects to it, and we have been keeping track of everything that we have spent on the first half of our payment. But when I did the reporting to the state, they said anybody under 10 million does not have to report out every single project. You can put the whole thing to revenue, just from the revenue loss that we had from COVID. So we have no reporting requirements left on that money at all. But I would suggest that council keeps allocating it, and we're still putting it on staff reports, what's appropriate use of it. And so we're still tracking it with the project code, and we're prepared to report back every dollar we spent of that money.
Do we plan on having a separate discussion regarding the specific allocation of those funds?
Absolutely, if council wishes, then yes. Yep.
I think it seems like in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times those money's been kind of set aside, put into special kind of savings accounts or into the PEPRA and different things. Is that correct?
We did restrict it, so it's part of our restricted reserves, but it would be up to council to appropriate it, and we would love direction on how you'd like it spent.
Okay, so maybe we don't even need to do it today, but
Sure.
different council meeting.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, since law enforcement or public safety was brought up, I know we have budgeted additional law enforcement. So where are we at regarding what we have budgeted and how many positions left to be filled?
We're way behind, and we're getting no applications. I mean, it is, the difficulty that we're running into, Councilman Smith, is that it is a extremely competitive market out there right now, and the number of people that were looking to go into the profession previously is not the same any longer. It's changing environment, and so we're just kind of moving through that. So there's been some changes in the law with SB 2, which makes it much more difficult for people to get through a background process. I mean, because what used to be our discretion or would be the council discretion is no longer that. It's been taken by the state. They will have the final say. There's decertification that's occurring of police officers that are no longer suitable because of their past or things that they have done. So it's just a really challenging environment right now. And we are doing the best that we can to hire, but it is extremely difficult right now.
And I appreciate that answer. I guess my
The to-
point,
the number is, if you want to know, is we're down 9 officers and we're down 2 dispatchers. And our MLE program is doing fairly well, but there needs to be some realignment of that. So we're going to be probably down a couple, 2 or 3 in that area as well.
I guess my point to that is that even if we were to add more law enforcement dollars to the budget, really wouldn't change the outcome, at least not at this point.
No.
I guess if we had a fully staffed department, then, that we might want to, re-examine that, where we are and how well, how efficient that department is running at that level. But until we start getting close to that, I don't think that adding more dollars to that budget is going to change the equation.
No, you're making an excellent point, and it's not just in public safety, it's our overall budget. And I'd always caution everybody to remember, it's just a budget. I mean, it's the framework of what you intend on trying to do over the course of the next fiscal year. I have never engaged in a fiscal year, and I think anybody sitting up here has many more experiences or years than myself, will tell you that we go into with the best intention of this budget, but it changes over the course of the year. Things happen along the way, so it's just a budget. It's where we want to live. But also, every year, we'll come in and we'll tell you in October somewhere, hey, we had a $2 million surplus. Things are great. Well, what that surplus is that is unfilled positions. That means that we put it in the budget and we said, hey, we're going to spend this amount of money, but then we were unable to fill those positions over the course of the year. So we showed a savings, which means we had a $2 million surplus. It doesn't mean that our revenue shot up $2 million and now instead of having $21 million to spend last year, our city income has now went up to $23 million. No, we just weren't able to fill those positions. So it's an excellent point. When we have the struggles with employees of hiring new people, and we also have the struggle with the commodities, getting things, buying cars, buying large pieces of equipment. We need dump trucks. We can't even order them. There are no open tickets that they will take to let us order a dump truck. So it's, so you will see some savings over the course of the year, and it's only because these things aren't available. It isn't because revenues shot up. We're very well aware of that. We're very cognizant of that, and we budget to that, understanding that those dollars are there. I think an important thing that Ruth could probably share with the council is what is our reserves. So that, it's important that our community knows we do have a healthy reserve, and the council is fiscally conservative when it comes to the reserve policy that we have for our city.
And then I just have one more quick comment, and that is, given the current federal activity of quantitative tightening, and we're perhaps going to see a 0.75% bump tomorrow, that's the projection anyway with interest rates, how I guess, smart do you think it was with buying down our cost with the CalPERS? I mean, it would be nice to kind of see that perhaps in 6 months where we would have been had we kept with the program that we were on versus the action that we took, in the light especially of the current quantitative tightening that's going on now, across the nation.
I think we're still really much better off just because we got the interest rate of 3.2. So I think anyway, we're going to be better off. I think the challenge to look for in the future is that they're only looking at a 1% investment return this year. So we're going to get a new unfunded liability. It's going to keep coming back, but that's why we have our PARS account, and I'm hoping that we can address future unfunded liabilities and pay them off every year. That is our goal. That's what we've been doing with PEPRA, and so I'm really hoping that we can continue to do that. I just don't know how much it's going to be.
Yeah, I guess that's a double-edged sword, because
Yeah.
then, there are some people talking about now they're going to have to put off retiring because of what's happened to their investments.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
it is a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I wanted to circle back to the code enforcement question. So all of the code enforcement department is in the district tax fund. So I put it up on the screen, and you can see that all of them are in the district. There's nothing in the general fund for code enforcement. It's all in that fund. Did
Vice
you-
Mayor Thompson?
Just a question for you. In regards to the police department, is there an age limit on applying for the police department or police academy?
The current age is 21,
You have to be,
21 years of age.
what about on the top end of that?
Oh, on the top end? We're not allowed to
Student
discriminate
testing?
based on age. We're not allowed to discriminate based on age.
And do they only hire full-time, or do they do part-time as well?
Are you interested?
You could do, if somebody were
I don't think a
interested in
person
being
on
a
the council
reserve,
can be on
being a
police
reserve
department.
officer, there is an extended modified academy that they could attend. It's an 18-month process in the evenings and weekends. And then once that is complete, they could work as a reserve officer.
But you can't be on the council and be a reserve officer.
No. I said reserve.
No, I've never explored the, I don't know. I'm gonna go with no by consensus.
No.
Councilmember Riggs.
Hey, when could we, I know that you always provide this to us, in my mind, it just isn't categorized on the date properly or the time frame. But when can we expect to see the actuals from the 2022 revenue and expenses?
So we still accrue July and August, and I've always been able to bring that to you in October. So
Thank you.
September, we do the analysis, and then I've been able to do that pretty consistently in October. But then who knows when we actually get our audit done? So it is an unaudited estimate that I give you. Otherwise, we'll be waiting a really long time. I think they were March this year. It was really, really late. So October.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, one thing I don't see in the budget, and one thing that I think that, given what you mentioned here about law enforcement and the shortage there, we don't have a shortage of poor security in our parks and our places around that are public for the city. I'd like to see the option of contracting out private security forces that may be available added to the budget as a line item, because certainly we have to do something. We can't let it go as it's going, because I get the calls pretty much daily over problems in the parks, and our code enforcement's doing a great job with that particular population that's caused the problem, but now they're getting a little more vicious in terms of leaving notes, in terms of destroying property, which I spent 2 hours this morning taking care of vandalism in my business. So I think that having some kind of private security, much like the state of California provides to the fish hatchery and other places around here, I think other local governments are doing it. I don't know the costs. I don't know if we can piggyback on the state, but I'd like to see that somewhere in the budget. And certainly, I guess it would fall under law enforcement or maybe community development, one of those two categories. But we ought to plan for it, because we need it. And I understand the shortage of officers. I mean, I'd love to see all the officer positions filled, and we have officers patrolling the parks, especially at night. That's where we're getting the phone calls. That's where the problems are occurring. Just the other night, I think all the lights were shut down at the Lot Home St. Park. And we don't know why they were shut down, but obviously someone wanted them shut down so they could spend time there. I got 2 phone calls out of that. And so we're having a problem with our public spaces, parks being the primary one. I know in one park, an occupant was habitating in the bathroom. No one was allowed to use the bathroom, and the events were going on. So we need something in our parks, and it's whether it's private security, dedicated officers, whatever the case may be, ranger, patrol. Something needs to happen with our parks, and it's not a good thing that's going on. So that's my suggestion.
I think that's a great idea, Councilman Pittman, and we will work with the company. I think it's Platinum, and why we've landed on Platinum is they are the ones that are providing the security, I believe, for DWR, which is already along our riverfront anyway. So if we can piggyback off of that contract, that will be something that we can accomplish rather quickly. Put that in place. The other, where the money will come from that is we will use the salary savings, and we will do line item adjustments within the police department budget to make those dollars available for that outside service. I believe that's the most expeditious way to do that, isn't it, Ruth?
So it'd be nice to see at least a line item in the budget for that, so that when we
Okay.
do find it, we put it together, it has somewhere to land.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen.
So what we'll do, Councilman Pittman, and this is the will of the council, is we'll put the line item in there. There'll be $0 in it. And then what we'll do is we will do the salary, as we accumulate the salary savings, those will be transferred in there to fund that contract, which, if we can get into that contract, that'll be coming back to this council shortly to make a decision if you want to move forward on that or not.
Well, and my perspective is right away, because the problem is now, I don't look to be it as a long-term thing. I'm not suggesting we have a 20-year commitment to anybody. But right now, we have people that are not using our parks because of a population that's in there now. And that, we just can't stand for. That's not what, otherwise, we might as well fold the doors up and say, forget it. We're not a city anymore if we don't at least provide that security to our parks. So, appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. LeGrand, before we leave this meeting, I'd like it to be made clear about why this number is 6.1 million. I believe it was made clear to me, but I know that people are going to walk out of here saying that CAL FIRE cost us $6.1 million. We have over $1 million in old unfunded liability that we're paying off over the next 2 years, right, per year.
There is unfunded liability into this budget. There's also your service and supplies are rolled into this budget to pay for the cost, the operational costs of the fire department. What this budget reflects is the policies of the council. I mean, as the council through the course of the fiscal year has made various changes, directed certain things, and adopted certain policies, staff works for a budget to fund those policies. This budget reflects all of those policies as far as we are aware, unless, if anything, there's something probably not in here that should have been in here. There isn't anything, and I don't believe in here, that's overfunded or overstated. So this budget does accurately reflect your policies for the last fiscal year and will carry our city, hopefully financially, through the next fiscal year. So I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I hope it does.
And I would, I'm, for one, am happy to hear about the urgency to get security in the parks, and that it has always made sense to me that when we are suffering from existential threats, that we contract out public safety so we can get coverage. Appreciate that. Councilmember Riggs?
I have two things. I'll start with the more simple one before I forget it. On page 28, there's a gas tax regional surface transportation program fund. We have quite a bit lower plan for 2023 compared to 2022. Is there a specific reason for that you could shine a light on?
Yeah, I try to budget what's available. So if you see that the ending fund balance is 85,000, I just tried to take out as much as we could without making it negative.
Okay.
So, to me, just rounding numbers, we can say we can safely pay out 500,000. I mean, we could pay out the 585 if you want to take the account to zero if we need to, but I happen to know from the last couple of years, we've been having a hard time getting these projects done. So I just wanted to appropriate as much as I could, and hopefully we'll catch up.
If I could, Councilperson Riggs, jump in there just real quickly. If you look at the revenues are fairly consistent across the board. They haven't dropped. I think what this is a reflection of is that more work is actually being done in that area with those available dollars. So that balance will come down as we do more work.
Okay, thank you. And then the second thing that I had was that Mr. Legrone mentioned it might behoove this council for you to share about the health of our reserves. And then we moved on to other conversation, but I would like to hear that.
I believe it's
Prepared.
I believe it's 6.5 million with another 1.5 allocated for this year. So we've been putting 1.5 million into reserves every year.
I think Councilman Pittman and myself and Mr. Hatley have said in this room when our reserves have went down to as low as $250,000 with the
14,000 one day.
14,000. I mean, so for us to have that kind of reserve, we are very proud of that. We want to maintain that because we don't know what's going to happen, and this could potentially bail us out if there was a large issue that we had to deal with suddenly. So, we're very proud of that. We want to maintain that. I don't ever want to go back to having $14,000 and that's it. I mean, so.
At what point was that?
That wasn't that long ago.
When we remodeled this building to build the city hall into it was 1980, 81, 80. and the funds were used to remodel this building and it brought it down to $14,000 reserve.
And in the early 2000s, we got down to 200 at one point. I mean, and we didn't, the budget projection showed at that particular time that the 200 was optimistic. There was a huge hole. We didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, when we just went, it was a step at a time each day.
When did we start the procedure of adding, you mentioned that we've consistently added 1.5 around that amount. When did we start doing that?
I would say in the last 5 years. I can be more specific if I can get back to my desk and do the research, but we started allocating one-time monies and surpluses to the reserves. So I would say in the last 5 years, we've been consistently doing that.
Well, good job, guys.
So you do have, the council has been conservative, you do have that, but you also have your PARS account, which is a stabilization account that's used for PERS situations. So, which there is another, I think, what is it, $4 million in there right now? Well, there was $4 million, I believe.
Yeah, that's another conversation we
Yeah, we
should
don't-
probably have. So PARS is our investment account that we have for pensions, and then we opened up one for post-employment benefits for $400,000. It's at 362 right now. So we are losing money in our investment accounts like everybody is right now. So I wanted to let you know that I delayed opening that investment account that we were going to invest $10 million in. I have been dragging my feet because I haven't been seeing very good returns. We would have lost money had I opened it. So I need to report back to you that has not been opened yet, and we're delaying that until we see things turn around.
That seems very wise. Thank you.
And so I think the point is that we're trying to to let everyone know is that the council staff were very conservative. I mean, but the city is very financially solid at this point.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman?
Yeah, quick question on page 44, it's called the West Side Public Safety Facility, 2006-1 and -2. Those are the Mellows Ruse funding sources. I noticed a substantial increase from 2021 to 2023. Is that based on the quantity of new homes completed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was. Good
And then
catch. Yeah.
the Ruddy Creek subdivision, is that going to have a Mellows Ruse attached to that or not?
Yes, that was recently approved by council.
Okay, good, thank you.
So we're getting to a healthy situation in both of those accounts, so that I think at some point, we need to have a discussion about acquiring probably a facility in that part of town, and most likely on airport property and building it out. I mean,
Yeah.
so we're getting to some realistic numbers. It took a long time. This account has been fledgling for quite a while just because of the development started, then it never was completed. There's been an uptick recently, and with that new development and the potential new development that's coming out there, it may become a sustainable situation where we can actually build and open a second facility in that area.
Well, I'm only responding to those folks that live in those subdivisions
Yes.
that are